Welcome to GoPowercat.com's Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by Weddle & Sons Roofing. Now, here's Fitz.
Welcome to another edition of the Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by our friends at Weddle & Sons Roofing right here in Manhattan and with locations all over Kansas and the Midwest. Make sure you check them out if you have roofing needs. They are absolutely wonderful. And speaking of wonderful, Kansas State beat Colorado last weekend in a very competitive, entertaining, and physical game in Boulder, 31-28. And that win puts Kansas State in a very strong position as the Wildcats head to Morgantown this week to face the West Virginia Mountaineers. And the Mountaineers are coming off a loss to Iowa State on their home field. So back-to-back home night games for West Virginia. And the Mountaineers have something to prove that they're still in this Big 12 race. They are 3-3 overall, but 2-1 in the Big 12, what matters most, while Kansas State is 5-1 and also 2-1. So both of these teams are still fighting to stay in the race, and two losses might make it an awfully steep uphill battle to get to the Big 12 championship. At season start, I picked this game as Kansas State's linchpin game. As long as the Wildcats headed to Morgantown in a really good position, this game could set the Cats up for a spot in that Big 12 championship if they just keep taking care of business. The tough game was Colorado. It was an emotional game. And as I mentioned, it was very physical. K-State lost a bunch of players in its secondary. No, Colorado fans, those weren't fake injuries. And now they will see who's able to go to Morgantown and fill up the roster because they might be digging deep in some spots. Kansas State after this comes home to play Kansas, has an off week, then goes to Houston, then plays Cincinnati and Arizona State, and then go to Iowa State to finish up the season. So this game kind of feels like the gateway to something great for K-State. You can't lose focus in this conference. Every game is tough, and you have to focus on every game. But it's this one that stood out to me before the season and more so right now. The good news for K-State fans is this is not a late night game, naturally, since it's on the East Coast, but it is a night game, 6:30 p.m. Central Time on Fox. You're going to see this game, and you'll be able to go to bed at a decent hour. Next week, we don't know the kickoff time of the Kansas K-State game. It is on a 6-day hold. We should find out on Sunday, but I sense that that's going to be a night game too. And what does that mean? That means K-State's worthy of really good time slots. So you should be flattered by that, even if you don't like night games, which I don't on the road, particularly with travel. But this game just kind of looms large for the future of Kansas State football in 2024. If they want to accomplish all they can accomplish, then this one is a necessity. And we're going to dig deep into this game with the usual cast of characters, starting with Brien Hanley, the former Kansas State offensive lineman. He's standing by to get us started with this kind of breakdown of where the Wildcats are coming out of that win in Boulder. And then we'll turn to Ryan Wallace and dig into the West Virginia Mountaineers a little bit. We'll hear from Chris Kleiman and Avery Johnson, as we always do. And then we will wrap it up with our sports betting segment with our own Ryan Gilbert. And then we'll have you all ready for that game. And if you don't feel ready, don't worry. You can have the Friday walkthrough one day later to continue your preparations. As I mentioned, Brien Hanley is standing by. Let's get over to Big B right now as we begin this edition of the Powercat Pregame Podcast. And let's get this party started as we normally do with Brien Hanley, the former K-State offensive lineman. Big B, big win at Colorado, but it's time to move on, isn't it? You can't stay rooted back there. And fans, it doesn't matter. Let's be honest. But the team, or if they keep hearing the fans, I guess, talk about it, it can be a problem. But if the team doesn't completely turn their focus to West Virginia, this could be a major issue.
Yeah, I mean, the team could celebrate and on the plane back, although they were probably sleeping on the way back.
Come back at
But you get Sunday and then you got to turn the page. It's just like every other week. Kansas State's not new to winning big football games, so I don't think it should be a problem.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the coaches have been down this road before. It is a little strange to get the back-to-back road games. It happens about once a year, but these two games felt like they had some gravitas. And Colorado became that way later because it was clear they had improved.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, West Virginia always stood out as a really important game that opens the door to the rest of the season as long as you're in a good position going into that game. And K-State is at 5-1, 2-1 in the conference. They don't completely control their destiny, but it's damn close. And this game now really is that linchpin game I feared it would be. It could absolutely set them on course for a date with Iowa State that could decide a Big 12 championship team, or this one could dent them and maybe lead to a few more losses because West Virginia at night at home is no pushover.
No, they're not a pushover. It's another big game. But the one thing that I would say is that if Kansas State was trying to win this conference or at least get to the Big 12 title game, these are the games you have to win. It's just that simple. It's a big game. West Virginia, look, there's a lot going on there right now. I don't know if we'll get into that or not, but there's a ton going on at West Virginia. But what I do know is that they can beat Kansas State. And even with all the stuff going on at West Virginia, they got everything to play for too. They can still make it to the Big 12 title game as well. So everything is not lost at West Virginia because they lost to Iowa State. So Kansas State's got to go in there and play some good football.
Yeah, this can be a dangerous West Virginia team. They are capable of playing much better than they did last week against Iowa State, but also credit Iowa State's defense, maybe the best defense in the conference, really made it very difficult on Garrett Green to operate. I love Garrett Green. I think he's a warrior quarterback. You know how much I appreciate that. Guys that just put everything out there and basically shame the rest of their team into playing as hard as they do. I love that. But he's not the best thrower in the conference. If you were going to miss Jacob Parrish, and we don't know what his status is as we record, this might be a game you would pick for him to miss because it's less of a pass threat as a run threat from this quarterback.
It is. Now he's got some skills, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but it's definitely more in the running department and not even designed runs. It's scrambling around and making things happen. But I've said on a couple other podcasts, and definitely said on the Big 12 Insiders, Garrett Green will throw you the football. You just got to catch it. So that's one of the things that Kansas State has to do. I like him. He's gritty. But when it comes to throwing the football, he's not the greatest. He's not terrible. So I don't want anybody to think I'm saying he's a terrible thrower. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's not his forte. And if you can stop West Virginia from running the football and you make him throw it to beat you, that's your best chance to win.
As a defense coordinator, how do you stop a quarterback that is truly dual threat who wants to pass the ball, but at the first sign of trouble or pressure, he can flush. He's more incapable of running the ball. I don't think K-State's really faced that. Every time we see K-State go up against a better, maybe more mobile quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, he doesn't really want to run the ball. I get the feeling Garrett Green embraces running the ball and would like to do that often.
He does. How you stop him? First of all, you got to contain him. That's number one. You can't let him just get outside the pocket. But when he does run, you got to hit him. You got to tackle him, and you got to keep hitting him, and you got to keep tackling him. And that's just the nature of the beast. Look, he's athletic. He's going to run around. He's going to make some plays. That's going to happen. But you have to continue to hit him. And again, you have to contain him. You can't just keep letting a guy break contain because number one, when he breaks contain, somebody's going to come up and he's going to be able to throw the ball over your head. That's number one. But number two, he's out there and nobody else is out there. So you just have to contain him when he does run. And when he runs up the middle, you got to tackle him. You just literally have to tackle him and keep tackling. The same thing you would do with the running back. Just continuously hit him.
K-State's offensive line was okay at Colorado. Look, the running was awesome. And sometimes there was obvious holes there. And other times it was DJ Giddens doing a little magic show. But they didn't protect Avery Johnson very well. Give me your assessment of this offensive line coming out of Colorado.
Here's what I'll say. Some of the sacks were not on the offensive line. Some of the sacks were Avery's not getting to guys that are open. He's not getting through progressions. There were at least twice where guys are running across the field. Nobody's even anywhere around them. and then he's holding the ball and getting sacked. So you can't blame the offensive line there. And I think you're 1,000% correct, Fitz, as far as the run game. A lot of people are saying, well, did you see the offensive line? And there were times when there were gaping holes, but there were other times where it was just DJ Giddens doing the work. So the line was okay. I mean, I don't think they played bad, but they need to be better. They need to start getting it in gear and starting to be better because, again, all of the sacks weren't Avery Johnson's fault. You got to be able to protect them. And look, Colorado is better up front, but that's not a team that should be sacking your quarterback. I'm sorry. That just shouldn't be happening. They don't have that kind of defensive line. Better, yes. Should be able to get after Kansas State when on obvious passing downs. They're not that good. Kansas State they got to be better. Offensive line's got to start to get in gear.
But this running game for K-State has turned into a pretty nice weapon. You control the ball. DJ Giddens picks up first downs. You keep the opposing offense off the field. And more importantly for me is you set a physical tone to your day at the ball field. You're just pushing them around. I have people asking me about K-State's passing game. What other receivers will step up? And I'm like, I don't know, because you may not need to pass the ball. You're going to pass it for effect because you're going to win the game running the ball. This is a good thing to have if you're a football team aspiring to greatness, is the ability to control game on the ground.
It is. But I don't know. Here's the thing. Running the football, it obviously is a way to win, and controlling the clock. That's football. That's football 101. If you can run the ball and they can't stop you, just keep running the football. There's no reason to even throw the ball. But if K-State's trying to go to where they're trying to go, they have to be able to throw it. And you can't just throw it to one guy. So if that's what we want, then yes, they have to be better in the passing game. Now, if we don't, which I'm doubting that's the case, then we can just continue down this path and the season will be what it is. But yeah, and I think they can win a lot of the rest of their football games by just running the football, playing ball control, throwing it when we need to, that kind of stuff. I just don't believe that that's where they're trying to be. But Fitz, that might be all that we're capable of doing right now with the passing game. I mean, I think that's something that a lot of people just don't say. It might be all that we're capable of, unfortunately, which would be unfortunate, or it's just a matter of getting more opportunities. But I'm kind of with you. If you don't need to throw it, don't. Just keep running it.
Yeah, and I think that certainly was demoralizing to the Colorado defense, particularly what DJ was doing once he got through that first line of defense and put a move on someone. It was kind of disgusting how good he was. And but there are times to throw the ball, as K-State proved in how the game ended. Eventually, Colorado brought 9 up to the line. Their free safety wasn't very far off the line. They were ready to stop the run and go man-to-man on the outside, and they paid a price.
Yeah, and that's what happens is Colorado just finally said, and I've said this several times, I'll say it again, is that they had 9 guys within 6 yards of the football, which is crazy, when you're not on the goal line situation. I mean, K-State got the ball at their 19-yard line, and that's what they decided. We're not going to let you just methodically run it down the field, because K-State was getting 12 yards and then 16 yards and maybe 22 yards. And and Colorado was like, okay, we're not going to let you do that and run out the clock and go beat us. We're not going to have you do that. So they brought those guys up, threw the football. We're in the end zone. We just throw it over their head, which is what you have to do. So the passing game can be there, but the emphasis just has to be on it, but we'll see. Again, it's a growing offense, a young quarterback. You can't throw everything at him immediately. You just can't do that. That's not what you do to young guy. Any guy, you in a new offense, a first-time starter, you don't just throw the kitchen sink and go, okay, let's figure it out. Every play that I call, you better have it down pat. That's not how this works. It doesn't work for anything. So K-State will be fine. But it definitely worked against Colorado. When they needed to throw the football, they were able to throw the football.
Avery Johnson left the game in Boulder with what I believe to be a hip pointer, something dealing with his hip. They gave him the old shot in the hip and he was good to go. But that is an injury that can linger. And as Chris Kleiman said at the end of the game, we took Avery out of the run game. We weren't going to call a quarterback run. I'm impressed not having the quarterback run in the arsenal, and K-State still won that game. I think that was a huge sign of progress about this offense and how it's built, that DJ Giddens and Avery's arm and Jace Brown running can finish it off and not need that quarterback run portion of the offense, which I think is critical in some instances. But this was a good breakthrough for K-State.
Well, and Colorado never adjusted. And
No.
that's the thing, is that they kept running read options. Well, Avery never kept the football. And nobody even thought to themselves in Colorado thinking, hey, he's not running. Like, he never kept the football after that. So if they're not going to adjust, and they kept running it, K-State was like, we're going to continue to run this read option look to make you think that, and that's good on Kansas State's parts, to make you think that every now and then he's going to keep the football, and that's what you have to do. So it's a great coaching strategy, even knowing that, hey, he's never going to keep it, but we're going to act like he's going to keep it. So it worked. It's supposed to work that way, and it did.
Give me your thoughts on where this K-State defense is halfway through the season.
Look, a lot of people are going to look at the rushing numbers, and say, hey, that sack yardage, is a huge reason why they're only giving up, 72 yards a game or 71 yards a game. And I'll say this: Kansas State doesn't make the rules on whether sack yardage is counted or not. They don't get to make those rules, okay? Somebody else makes those rules. By the way, everybody else gets to play by those same rules that Kansas State does. So I don't want to hear the excuses on why the yardage is the way that it is. And also, use your eyes and see. Nobody's running the football on Kansas State. That's not happening. The BYU game, at the end of the game, if we're all being honest, that game was over when BYU was started to run the football. Kansas State is great against the run, but you can also say they're bad when teams are throwing the football against them. And that's a fair assessment. They have to be better. Part of it is getting after the quarterback, which they did a great job against Colorado. And I've said this: Colorado's offensive line was bad. K-State knew it, and they got after him. And K-State stopped blitzing too, Fitz. They were blitzing a lot, but then they said, you know what? We need more guys in coverage. D-line, go get them. And they did. So that will help, but they just have to be better on the back end. Make sure everybody's healthy, but they just have to be better. But I will say this: I don't think they're going to run into a collection of quarterback and wide receivers like this. I don't care if K-State's in the national championship game. They're not running into a collection of quarterbacks and wide receivers that are going to be like this the rest of the season. That's not going to happen.
I would agree. Colorado, that is their team strength, a really good quarterback and a ton of receivers. And K-State somehow survived to advance into this game to keep K-State's hopes alive. And as we progress through this Powercat pregame show, we're going to break down the West Virginia Mountaineers with Ryan Wallace. And then we'll talk to Ryan Gilbert about some of the fun prop bets and the lines for this K-State West Virginia game. And of course, we'll hear from Avery Johnson and Chris Kleiman, as we typically do. And that's coming up after this break. Brien Hanley, I appreciate it so very much, taking time for us and helping get us ready for West Virginia, because it's not an easy transition after a really fulfilling victory for the K-State football program.
I appreciate it, man. Always love to be on.
It's time to take a break for our sponsors. We'll be back with more from GoPowercat.com.
Weddle & Sons Roofing. Protecting homes, businesses, and providing peace of mind for more than 25 years. Weddle & Sons is your Tesla solar roofing outlet.
Now let's head back to the show for more K-State sports coverage from GoPowercat.com.
Welcome back to the Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by Weddle & Sons Roofing. We are one segment down in your preparation for Kansas State at West Virginia on Saturday night. And now it's time to dig deeper into the Mountaineers with our own expert, our Ryan Wallace. So now let's bring in Wally. Wally, what a difference a week makes for the West Virginia fan base. They were in a position to beat Iowa State and be unbeaten in the Big 12 and, look good for and be in really good shape.
Right.
They lost. And now there's almost infighting with Neil Brown asking, well, didn't you have fun at the game? I mean,
were you not entertained?
Well, what is he, the gladiator?
Right. Hey, they had a kick-ass drone show though.
It was actually
It
kick-ass.
actually was pretty
Yes, it
kick-ass.
was. Jane, drone show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I'd seen that. I'm fascinated by that. I I can't imagine that amount of programming and
Yeah.
stuff that goes into that. This is a pretty decent West Virginia team. They struggled in the non-conference. They got it going a little bit, but they're not also they're not overly frightening. But they're pretty good. At least once a season, they're outstanding at home at night. And it wasn't last week with Iowa State. So it's a little concerning that they're going to come out with their hair on fire, knowing they have to win this game to stay in the Big 12 race.
Yeah, you kind of teed that up for me because in my, you know, dive into West Virginia here this week and watching some game cut-ups and everything, it's weird. They're not a bad team,
No.
and yet they're not really a good team either. They're like painfully average, and I think that's probably what's driving West Virginia mad right now is that fan base got used to. Uh, I mean, there's rich tradition in that program,
Yes.
and the days of Geno Smith and that crew and Colin Klein going in there for that, what was that, a top 10 matchup, I think at the time, or at least top 15 seems like ages ago. But even the days that when Dana Holgerson was there and some of the players that they had, that to me is what stands out most about this West Virginia team is like, as you said, Fitz, I think they're good enough on any given day to give opponents fits. However, they're like a playmaker or too short at almost like on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They're just missing that sizzle or so, I don't know how to put it into words, but it's another frightening game. Like this was my game coming into the season. So preseason, this was kind of that sleeper game, that sneaky like catch you game. I don't know if it's as sneaky anymore, with Kansas coming up. I think K-State's going to be ready to go there. I think with what happened in Boulder and having to pull that one out, it's not like K-State cruised in that one, and therefore they're kind of, heads are in the clouds. I mean, I don't know if they're going to overlook West Virginia, but at the same time, like you hope if you're Chris Kleiman that you get this team to buy in, because I do think what you said is very true, and we can get into that in a little bit about how much better this team is at Milan Puskar Stadium at night versus kind of in the daytime. I mean, it's not BYU level like Provo at night, but I mean you're right. They're good for about one a season, and they haven't had one yet. Is Saturday night going to be their time?
Well, for the sake of the couches of Morgantown, I hope not. I mean, we got to save a couch here and there in our life on this earth, but yeah, they're good at night, and it's such a cool venue, and I love West Virginia fans. It'll be equally loud as last week, but less beer being thrown.
Yeah.
And yeah, West Virginia fans are smart enough to keep that beer because you can drink it. And I'm just really curious how K-State handles that. They handled the CU spectacle. I mean, you got pro athletes and entertainers on the sideline watching the game. Gills is climbing out of the press box because Rick Ross is in town. You wanted to go find him. It was like a premiere of a movie. There's so much star power there. And you go to West Virginia and they just want to kick your ass.
Yeah.
And I think it's a problem that K-State needs to be aware of, that you can't go back to, okay, we're good on the road now, because it's one day at a time or you'll get your butt kicked.
Well, and this is a team I mentioned, they lack maybe some of the star power. I think Garrett Green at times can look really good and then at other times doesn't, but he lacks some of the supporting cast. Then defensively too, they're kind of in shambles with a number of key injuries. It sounds like Aubrey Brooks might not be able to go on Saturday, and he's been a big time starter for them. TJ Jackson, a guy that K-State's actually ironically familiar with because he transferred in from Troy, defensive lineman. Sounds like he's doubtful, highly doubtful for this game. They were already down their starting defensive tackle that started the first two games of the season. He's basically done for the year several weeks back. So yeah, they're just kind of putting pieces together and trying to hang on for dear life. And yet, at the same time, and I think Chris Kleiman mentioned this during the week, this team fights. Like they play hard for Neil Brown. There'll be games where they come out, hair on fire, like they did in Stillwater, and got up like 24-0 on Oklahoma State. And, we've been over the Cowboys by this point, but still to go into Stillwater and pounce like that with a team, as I've said, that seems to be lacking a lot of, dynamic playmakers, says something about the team, says something about, playing to their assignments, but yet they're also capable of pulling it out, right? I mean, with KU, that was a game that looked dead in the water for West Virginia, and they come back from at least 7 points down. It might have been more than a touchdown, and end up winning that in the last 6 minutes of the game. They were kind of in it with Iowa State. It seemed like Iowa State controlled the game, and yet the Cyclones couldn't really add to their cushion on the scoreboard because West Virginia just hangs around. So you're right, Fitz. I mean, this is really a game and an environment that if you let this team hang around and you don't, what's a polite way to say this? Halloween term, slit the throat, so to speak. That's getting too graphic here for Halloween. But I mean, if you don't really, put your foot down on this team, they are a team that they're a team that'll come back on you, and it's a fan base that is not going to go away. They don't head for the exits. So K-State's got to come out and be really, really focused from start to finish in a different way than they needed to be at Boulder.
Agreed with that. I love Garrett Green. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks in this conference because he's one of those guys that doesn't have the skill sets that you normally would want to put on the field. And that probably is why he struggled to see action until he played against K-State in 2022 in Morgantown.
Yeah.
But he's an absolute he's a battering ram. He puts everything out there, and he leads by example, and he makes enough plays to propel the offense. Not a great thrower, but a good thrower. And he can hurt you. I think he's their heart and soul. And if he's playing well, I think West Virginia plays well. So you have to get after Garrett Green and stop him from running. Best of luck, K-State. How do they go about that?
Well, I think Iowa State put on a pretty good game plan last week in terms of what they did on defense. And I know West Virginia had some success early in the game, but you saw Coach Heacock and company with Matt Campbell and the Cyclones really come out and make some adjustments there. And I think they laid the groundwork if it were me. Garrett Green, it's weird, Fitz, because he can make some throws that you're going, man, this kid's got some moxie to him. He can find guys. And obviously we know what he can do with his feet, but yet at the same time, he does some tries to be Superman sometimes. And it's gotten him beat up, trying to keep some plays alive. And he's thrown it in areas that you're just going, why? His accuracy, I think, is one of the worst among starters in the Big 12. So he's going to put some out there. And you're hoping that a healthy, we think, fingers crossed, K-State secondary can take advantage of that a little bit. But he's got some moxie to him. And I really like the line too, Fitz. It's weird. Like they're numbers wise, they aren't dominating. But I think their pass protection has actually been pretty solid. Across the board, they've played over 2,000 snaps collectively as a unit and have given up, I think as a unit, only 4 sacks. Total West Virginia's given up more than that over the course of the season, but Green's kind of been in and out. So I think some of those might not be completely contributed to him in this starting offensive line, but I think their pass pro is good. They haven't been great at running the ball. CJ Donaldson is a guy that is kind of more their power back. They go to him a lot in the red zone, and that's why their red zone offense is really freaking good. Jaheim White is more their scat back, their kind of electric guy. And then you've got Garrett Green. So ironically, I say all that, all 3 of those guys are top 12, top 13 in the Big 12 in rushing, all 3 of them. And yet they just struggle. I don't know if it's the game plan. And so what we saw from Iowa State is they put their odd man front, 3 guys in the box, kind of hung a linebacker there to either spy Green or help in run support, and they dropped everybody else. And because I think that line has struggled so much to run the ball, outside of kind of Garrett Green design type stuff, Iowa State was kind of able to limit their rushing attack. I mean, they picked up some yards, but nothing dangerous, and then forced Garrett Green to beat them through the air, which he could not. and they don't have the playmakers on the outside. Hudson. Now I'm forgetting the Hudson Clement, the last name of the receiver there. There are moments where he looks like Dalton Schoen Fitz,
Yep.
and there are other moments where you're going, okay, he's the preferred walk-on guy that they've elevated to their number one receiver. And I like Cole Taylor at tight end. I think he can be a dangerous weapon, transfer from LSU, but that's pretty much it for Garrett Green. So again, if you make him be a passer, I think that's where he kind of gets himself in trouble. I think that's where West Virginia gets themselves in trouble. So if K-State can come out and find ways to limit the run with as few amount of guys near the line of scrimmage as possible, then I think that you can just drop some guys in coverage and say, beat us through the air, because that's what Iowa State did. West Virginia could not do it.
Well, that'll be an interesting approach. Now, we think K-State is healthy in the secondary. We're just not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were going to miss one of your top corners, this might be the game to do it. I mean, you need the depth, but a lot of guys got on the field at Colorado because of those injuries. But I think if Jacob Parrish can't go, look, Justice James did a good job at Colorado. He wasn't necessarily the problem. So I think this might be an ideal time to have an injury on the back end. It doesn't sound like Parrish is serious in any way.
Right.
He probably will play, but if you're just going to sit back in a zone man mix and try to stop them from throwing, I think there's others that can do that. And maybe, that turns a lot of your defensive backs into tacklers, and maybe it's best he just rests this game.
Yeah, it just feels like a really good opponent game plan for this defense, whether you're healthy or whether you're not, just because I think so much of what West Virginia wants to be on offense is what K-State is offensively. I mean, they're used to tracking down Avery Johnson. They've been doing it all off season. They have a guy for scout team in Taquan Roberson that can mimic Garrett Green. Like they can do that easily. Everything about, to me, West Virginia, it matches up well with K-State. And so as long as you've got guys that are going to be assignment sound, again, I mentioned Hudson Clement. He's a really good route runner. And because of Garrett Green's scrambling ability, these are receivers that are used to kind of trying to keep plays alive. And so the corners are going to have to stick with them, for maybe longer than they're used to. But, coming off Colorado, that was kind of the game plan last week.
Mm-hmm.
Going against Avery Johnson all offseason, that's kind of what you've been used to all offseason, and trying to stop the K-State offense. So defensively, again, if K-State can just kind of stick to the basics, let Brendan Mott do his thing, get that pressure from the inside with, Damian Alalio and those guys, stop the run. The linebackers played, I thought, really well at times against Colorado last week, and limiting the rushing gains there. Everything's there. Everything you've done to this point is what West Virginia is and wants to be. Stick to your assignments, and you can get it done. Again, like you said, Fitz, whether we're talking starters or backups, it's all there for you.
Yep, I agree. While we're on that topic, you mentioned Taquan Roberson coming in at Colorado, helping the team get down the field. Avery came in for the touchdown play, but that had to be comforting to the K-State coaching staff that when Avery does get dinged, someone can step on the field and play.
Mm-hmm.
And Roberson was unfazed. You could tell he was a 6-year senior. He was completely unfazed by that circumstance, and that crowd just went in there and made plays. That's a real positive sign if the worst happens with this offense and Avery Johnson.
Well, and I would also imagine that if we do see Taquan Roberson on Saturday night, this is a game he'll be juiced for. He's an East Coast guy, New Jersey based. I would imagine there'll be some family there for him, especially considering this is his final season. So, I mean, this is about as close to home outside of them coming to Manhattan for senior night that they're going to get for him. So I would imagine he'll be really juiced, and this is a good game for him. I think he's a capable thrower. I don't know if you want him throwing a ton, but he's proven he's a capable thrower. West Virginia defensively, I think they pursue to the ball in run support pretty well. I don't think that they're equipped, though, in terms of handling a DJ Giddens and the physicality that K-State's going to bring between the tackles. I think outside the tackles, they do a fair job. But what K-State wants to do is run DJ Giddens between the tackles and just bully you, in between the hash marks. And I don't know if West Virginia is really built for that. So I think Taquan Roberson can handle that if he's called upon. And then if it's Avery Johnson or Taquan Roberson through the air, I think we're seeing a little bit more from K-State's receivers, and we're starting to see a game plan that fits for them a little bit more. And this is a secondary to me that has struggled at times. They brought in a number of defensive backs from lower FBS or FCS level, and individually, I think they're capable. Collectively, we don't talk about that enough, Fitz, we talk about the cohesion of an offensive line. I think the same could be said about a secondary. And it just feels like they're a little out of whack in Morgantown right now, despite a lot of guys that have a lot of individual experience, really seasoned group, but struggle at times, at the cornerback position and safety to, is it your guy? Is it my guy? More so than we've even seen from K-State. And so I think you could ask Taquan Roberson to be a thrower and not have to unload the playbook to make it happen. Because I think we've seen the linebackers for West Virginia don't cover tremendously well over the middle. And I think the corners or the safeties have struggled at times to come up in coverage too, because they've had to help the corners a little bit. So again, getting back to it, if you're Avery Johnson or Taquan Roberson, I think they can be effective through the air in this game too. And again, Fitz, not have to go with the type of big deep balls that K-State needed against Colorado to finally unlock that offense.
It'll be interesting to see if the coaches want to run Avery Johnson. That hip could be still a problem this week. They probably want to get him healed up so he's ready to go against Kansas and get into the off week. So you might see a whole lot of DJ Giddens in this game, and that's all right with me. Just give him the ball and get out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, Giddens, again, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't line up with what West Virginia is and what we've seen. But he's averaging 131 rushing yards per game this season. The last time West Virginia allowed a tailback to go over 130, you'd have to go back 10 games to when they got beat badly in Norman last year against Oklahoma, and Gavin Sawchuk put up 135. So again, collectively, I think they can stop the run, but a lot of that is because I'm not sure they've faced a lot of fronts that are like DJ Giddens, that are like this offensive line, that want to beat you kind of up the gut, so to speak, and then exploit you on the outside after they've worn you down up the middle. So again, on paper, it looks like, okay, this is a West Virginia defense that might be able to slow DJ Giddens some. I'm not sure if they're really equipped to do that when push comes to shove.
Very good. He is Ryan Wallace, our recruiting editor, our analyst, our everything. He completes us.
It's a new 4-star this week for K-State recruiting. Let me slide that in there.
Yeah.
Shout out to Noah King, a guy that K-State goes out and gets out of Ohio, Fitz. They get him out of Hamilton, a little spot north of Cincinnati. They convince him to come, despite pretty good offer list, come out and compete at camp over the summer. He does. Impresses them enough for an offer, commits. He's been on their commit list since kind of late summer, and now he's put enough together on his senior tape that the 24/7 National Scouting Department said, we like what we see. He is now a 4-star player and gives them their second top 247 player in this class, along with 5-star Lincoln Cure. So what kind of looked to be, at least originally, like a pretty good class, but mainly Lincoln Cure and a lot of other guys. I think we're starting to see that this staff really evaluated pretty well, because it's becoming a very solid class that also is gaining a reputation as a legitimate top 40 group.
I know this, you're a 5-star, and I'm keeping you. That's it for this segment of the Powercat pregame segment and pregame podcast. And after this, we'll hear from Kleiman, Johnson, and Gilbert. 3 names synonymous with K-State football success. I might have lied. We'll be right back.
It's time to take a break for our sponsors. We'll be back with more from GoPowercat.com.
Weddle & Sons Roofing. Protecting homes, businesses, and providing peace of mind for more than 25 years. Weddle & Sons is your Tesla solar roofing outlet.
Now let's head back to the show for more K-State sports coverage from GoPowercat.com.
We still have some work to do. We've got to continue to improve. We're at the halfway point, and excited about where we're at, but we've got a lot of stuff to do, and we've got to be better this week. We're playing a really, really good West Virginia team that I've got tons of respect for Neil and what he's done, and he and I are on the same time frame of being hired at the same time. We're on the board of trustees together and know him well, and he's doing a really good job down there.
Update on some of those injuries.
Nobody's ruled out, which is good. I don't think many will practice today, but nobody has been ruled out. We probably got better news on a couple of the guys, but probably closer to Wednesday before we know. But I anticipate everybody having a really good shot to play.
And how did Avery grow from this experience, kind of playing through an injury?
In the fact that a couple things, he grew in a number of ways. One, the injury was one thing, but then a flip in philosophies at halftime where we were doing a great job denting them in the run game, and then in the second half, they changed their defensive front and said, we're going to put 5 guys up here, and we didn't have quarterback run like we talked about, and we had to make some plays in the pass game, and he made a great throw to Jace down the middle of the field one time that sparked us to get that field goal. And then the plays late to hang in there. He just got the ball off on the one to Jace and found the maybe the mistake in coverage with DJ. So without a doubt that he keeps growing and getting better and keeps learning from his experiences.
You get to see DJ Giddens every day in practice. Are you still kind of amazed at how much progress this kid just keeps making and making?
Yeah, and he practices the way you guys watch him play. And, he's one of those guys where we try to give him a few breaks during the week, and he doesn't want them. He wants to stay out there. He wants every rep he can get. And he runs with great patience as well as with physicality. And as everybody's seen, he has the ability to make people miss in the hole as well as outside on the perimeter. And he's playing at such a high level, and excited to see him maybe start to finally get some of the respect he deserves.
How's the body feel?
Good.
That was a good answer. Looking back at your performance, what do you take away from it? Positive, negative, all that?
I feel like the biggest thing is just keep my head high and having poise in high pressure situations, high adverse situations, and just knowing my confidence never wavered at any time during the game. Obviously, things to just look back and improve on. Had some missed throws here and there, clean up some footwork, but ultimately it was a pretty complete game offensively for us, and DJ did a great job. Those guys up front did a great job. So we had a lot of our big time players step up Saturday. So I was thankful for those guys to make my job easier.
Important is that bond you have with Jace?
I think it's really important, and it just continues to show each week. And with somebody that you have as well as chemistry as me and Jace do off the field, it just translates and is used for a positive when Saturdays come around.
You just heard from Chris Kleiman and Avery Johnson, and now let's find someone even more handsome than those two. We couldn't find anyone, so we invited Ryan Gilbert. Hey, Gills, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Should I grow my hair out like Avery Johnson? You think that'd look good on me?
Yes.
Yeah. Try it out.
Not as good on you as me, but I think you should give it a shot. You have a better shot at accomplishing that hair. So now in the revised betting segment, we don't really talk about the Big 12 games. We just talk about K-State, some of the prop bets out there. But as we record this game, the over-under set at 55, and the spread is 3.5 for K-State on the road, which, interesting enough, I think was the exact same spread as Iowa State, which easily covered. What of those do you like the best about this game, the over-under or the spread?
Well, K-State at Colorado Fitz was also 3.5 point. Well, I guess they were, so favor. So the exact same back-to-back weeks, really interesting stuff. I like them both, Fitz. I think Kansas State here on paper is without a doubt the better team, and that's not me being biased or anything like that. Kansas State is a road favorite that tells you what you need to know there. So it really does come down to your confidence level in this team. If you think playing on the road, excuse me, if you think they can get it done in another, I'm not going to call this a hostile environment. It shouldn't be nearly as bad as Colorado or BYU was, because I know that the West Virginia fans are not happy with their head coach right now, but it still is difficult to play all the unfamiliarities of playing on the road is a challenge. If you buy into that, I get it if you want to stay away from Kansas State. However, for me personally, I saw enough in Boulder that this team is mature enough. They're not hitting the panic button when things maybe go wrong. And so that's why I like Kansas State to cover this spread. They've shown me that they can get that done. As far as the over under, I like the under in this game. It's no secret that Kansas State wants to establish a trusting attack. The same thing kind of goes for West Virginia. So 55, give me the under. And also, Fitz, I'll give you this. I probably like this even more. The first quarter over under is at 12.5. I love the under there. I think both teams are going to have to establish that rushing attack early. So you might see 2, maybe 3 possessions at most in that first quarter. And as long as you get a field goal or 2, you're fine with that under. So maybe later on in the game, it starts to get a little sweaty because West Virginia might be down and has to throw it, maybe get some points that way. But early on, first quarter, I love that under.
That's a good call right there. It will be intriguing to see how these teams come out of the gate. And, K-State's got to come out fast. They did it at Colorado. They came out with a little inspired football and never really let up. But for me, it's just all about their concentration. If they focus in, they're going to win this game. A guy who is focused in is DJ Giddens, as he just rolled through what was supposedly a good Colorado defense. He's going up against a less prominent West Virginia defense, although I always trust that West Virginia is going to play well against K-State because it typically happens. But this is a defense that would seem very welcoming to having 130 plus yards run on them. But then again, West Virginia, as Ryan Wallace pointed out earlier in the show, hasn't given up a 130-yard rusher in almost an entire season. Looks like the plus 120 in yardage is at plus 130, if that's not confusing. Is that something you would put your money on, DJ Giddens, to hit that over?
Absolutely, Fitz. Absolutely. I don't know if there's really much analysis that needs to be said. Anybody that is following Kansas State football knows what DJ Giddens is doing. I also like his receiving. For him to just get 10 yards is only minus 120. There's some real good odds there. I think that this team is maybe not fallen in love with the wheel route, but DJ Giddens has caught, or at least been in a position to catch a pass on a number of occasions coming out of the backfield. So I love everything around DJ Giddens. I don't know how to really expound upon that, but DJ Giddens, I like all of his overs.
Yeah, I would agree. Flipping it over to West Virginia, their top receiver, Hudson Clement, 50 receiving yards or more at plus 150. Give me your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, you can teeter totter with the alternate yards. You can go 35, 40, 45, 50, whatever. I think you might maybe be pushing it a little bit as you're getting plus money, plus 150, right at 50 yards. But so he is statistically West Virginia's best wide receiver, Fitz. But most importantly, he is West Virginia's most explosive receiver in terms of yards per catch. He's averaging over 15. And so when you look at K-State's secondary, I don't know if they're going to have everybody available. They might. They totally might. But there's a chance they might be missing some guys. Even if everybody is healthy, though, they have a tendency to give up the big play. So I think Clement can get this on maybe just 1 or 2 plays if West Virginia can hit a home run against K-State secondary.
Okay. It is early in the week, so not all the prop bets are up, but give me some of the unders or overs that you're really a fan of.
I just have 2 unders for you, Fitz.
Okay.
First one, Avery Johnson's rushing. We don't necessarily have any inside information on that, but he did not run much, if at all, against Colorado after that injury. So I would totally stay away from his rushing props just for this game. If you see him doing some stuff with his legs, then next week, get right back on that train. But for now, I'd caution away from that. And then also Keegan Johnson, injury. I don't think that anybody knew anything was happening until Chris Kleiman made a comment about it in his Monday press conference. That's another one where I'd maybe stay away from. And then lastly, Jace Brown. He had an amazing game. I think it's natural for West Virginia to try to stop him. He's going to be atop the scouting report. He was the MVP. I know DJ Giddens played extremely well, but he was the guy that got K-State over the hump, right, against Colorado. So I think West Virginia is going to do a lot to stop him. So, Brown, Johnson, and Avery and Keegan Johnson both. I wouldn't necessarily bet the under. I would caution staying away from their overs.
I would agree with all of that. That's why you're a very wise bettor, and I continue to lose money. At least I'm good at it. You're good at what you do.
I thought your wife didn't think you bet on sports. We won't make
Oh,
sure. Make
yeah.
sure Becky's not listening to this, right?
Honey, I do not bet on college football anymore. I sincerely mean that. Thank you, Ryan Gilbert. Appreciate it very much. We will see you at the airport because I got to sit next to you on a plane probably. Thank you, Ryan Gilbert. That will wrap it up for the Powercat Pregame Podcast. Kansas State and West Virginia, 6:30 p.m. Central on Fox at Milan Pushkar Stadium in Morgantown. The fall colors should be coming out in West Virginia. It could be a beautiful venue for football, and it's one of my favorite trips to make in the Big 12 because the fans are so stinking great. And now we got to see what happens on the football field. West Virginia is a bit desperate for a win, needing to protect the future of their coach, Neil Brown, who they're playing hard for. And Kansas State needs this road win to position themselves in a very strong spot to make it to Arlington to play for the Big 12 title. Cats and Mountaineers, Saturday in Morgantown. I'll be there, and I hope to see you there too.
Thank you for watching GoPowercat.com's Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by Weddle & Sons Roofing. This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production.